morning, boys and girls, and welcome to Let's Get Cooking. My name is Miss Jeannie, and I work at the Community Library in Salem, Wisconsin. And it is January here, and it is a cold month here in Wisconsin. I think it's in the 20s today. I actually have a warm coat shirt on, and I can see outside my window that we have snow. So it is definitely a colder month for us here in Wisconsin. And because of that, I thought it might be kind of fun for us to make something that would be appropriate for the weather, and it would be soup. So today we're making tortilla soup. And tortilla soup is a popular soup, and it comes from the country. Actually, it was introduced, they say, in Mexico City, in the country of Mexico. And so today I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about Mexico, and I wanted to show you the cookbook that I'm using. It's actually called Around the World. If you can see this, it's a cookbook with delicious dishes from across the globe. And there is a section in here for the country of Mexico. It is published by American Girl, and it actually has a lot of really great pictures, which that is the picture I used for this soup, as well as others, and easy step-by-step instructions on how to go about making these different dishes from around the world. And boys and girls, and you, those of you that are young at heart, encourage you to take a look at this cookbook or cookbooks like this in the children's section, or even in the adult section. There's a lot of different varieties of cookbooks. So Mexico, what do we know about Mexico? It's not very far from, well, I guess it is far from Wisconsin, but Mexico is in the south of us here in the United States. And I guess I want to ask you a couple questions to see if you know. Do you know what the main language which is spoken in Mexico would be? Well, if you said Spanish, you were right. Spanish. Now, there's a lot of different variations that they speak in that country, but Spanish is one of the main ones, and we actually have a lot of people even up here in Wisconsin that speak Spanish. And you can learn how to speak Spanish in a lot of your schools. And another question is, can you name 3 popular Mexican food items or food dishes? How many of you eat tacos? Well, that is one. Did any of you say burritos or enchiladas? Those are the 3 most popular in our country that come from the country of Mexico. And do you know what the most popular sport is in Mexico? Well, if you said soccer, you would be right, which is actually called football in Mexico. So soccer is the #1 sport there. And then 2 other fascinating facts that I thought was kind of interesting, that Coca-Cola, or soda pop, or cola, is one of the most popular drinks in Mexico. I didn't know that. And also that hot chocolate was once considered a sacred or very special drink by the Aztec people of Mexico. So if you're having a cup of hot chocolate on this cold day, you might remember that it was once very, very special to people down in Mexico. Matter of fact, a lot of chocolate is produced down there as well. So those are some kind of fun things about Mexico. But let's turn our attention to making soup this morning. And I want to encourage you to have your ingredients ready. Make sure you have what you need before you start so you don't get frustrated. You want it to be a wonderful, fun adventure trying new recipes. So as you can see, I have my ingredients ready. Also, I have chicken here, and I want to talk about chicken. I want to talk to you about chicken like I did about eggs in other sessions. Chicken and eggs are a food item that often carries bacteria. So when we work with chicken or eggs, we want to make sure, first of all, we always wash our hands first with soap and water. And while we're using these items, that we just use a little more cleanliness. Make sure that if you have a knife that you're using with your chicken, that it stays with just the chicken when it's raw. And after you start cooking it, you want to clean it before using it again. So you want to make sure your surfaces are clean, and as long as you remember those things, you're going to be just fine. So don't be afraid. Just be aware that you just want to make sure things are kept clean and tidy. And it's not a bad thing when you're preparing a meal to have one knife or spoon or fork for while you're starting to prepare it. Then once it gets started, put those away and maybe get clean ones for later when your dish is done, or wash them and reuse them. Okay, so let's get started. I actually started this morning by getting my chicken ready. Now you see right here in front of me is 2 chicken breasts. They are different sizes. One is a little bigger than the other, which is not a problem. I did cut off a little bit of the fat, which you can as well, or you can leave it on depending on what you want to do. A little bit of fat in your soup is not a problem. It's actually in most restaurant soups, so it gives a little bit more flavor. So go ahead and get your chicken ready. Make sure it's defrosted. If it's not, if it's still a little frozen, it's going to cook a little bit longer. So keep that in mind, okay? So we have our chicken right here, and I have my pot. We're going to be cooking on our stovetop only today. And remember, your safety with the stovetop is if you have, this is a gas oven and stove, so I'm going to have a live flame. You just want to be careful with that. If you have a electric stove, it heats up, but it's a little tricky. You've got to keep an eye on it to make sure that you don't touch it, because sometimes you don't know necessarily that it's hot. So just be careful. The more you use these appliances, the more comfortable you're going to get with it, and it's going to become second nature. You're just going to remember certain things, especially if you touch it and it's hot. You'll remember next time to be just a little more cautious. So I have my pot here. Now this particular soup says that it serves 4. So that's why I have just the 2 chicken breasts. And so if you have a big family, you might want to double this recipe. But for this one today, we're going to stick with what we have here, which is directly from the Around the Book cookbook. So I have my pot, which is big enough for this, and it asks for chicken broth. Now this is a box of chicken broth. It's very popular in all the stores. You can find it in the aisle with soup, and you want to purchase this. Mine says it's 40% less of sodium. Do you know what sodium is? That is salt. So mine, I didn't even realize it till I was at the checkout, but that's okay, because as we're cooking, we're going to be adding the different seasonings that we like. So I can add a little extra salt if I want to. But this is 40% less sodium, which is fine. It is chicken broth, so you're going to want to buy a box of that. That helps you start your soup. You're going to add this and 2 cups of water. So this is actually a 2-cupper, and so I did that already. I put that in my pot here. I let it come to a boil, and then once it came to a boil, then I added my 2 chicken breasts. I actually diced them up a little bit. The recipe calls for just putting them in like that, which you can do if you'd like. I diced them up a little bit because they do cook a little faster, and it normally takes about 10 to 12 minutes for chicken to boil if they're not frozen. And so when I was done with boiling them, this was what came out. My chicken, my diced up chicken. Now if you put them in like this without dicing them first, you're going to have to wait till they come out and then cut them up. So I did it ahead of time, which I find a little easier. Now how do you know if chicken is done? Now I'm not going to use this knife because that's for raw chicken. This is my knife that I use when my chicken was complete. You can cut a piece of chicken and it should easily cut and be white all the way through. And then you know it's done. So I took my chicken out of my broth and water. I put it on a plate here and I'm going to set it aside because now I'm going to start making the rest of the soup with the vegetables. And I don't want to overcook my chicken. So I have my chicken ready here and I have my pot with my fluid inside it. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's my chicken stock. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take one large carrot and a piece of celery and dice it up. And it made about 1 cup of diced up vegetables. And I'm going to add that to my soup. Add that. And now I'm going to add garlic. Do you like garlic? Garlic is very good for you, very healthy. My husband actually grows this in our garden. So this is fresh out of our garden. So this is what a garlic looks like if you haven't seen one. And this recipe asks for 1 clove. So if you were to open it up, it would be kind of like an orange. It would have different pieces. And this is a clove, is one of the pieces. So I took one of the pieces and it says to slice them up, which I did here. If you're not a huge fan of garlic, you can use a garlic press like this, where you get a clove out and you put it inside the press. This is a garlic press, and you press it. And you could use that as well. But I did slice my garlic, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to my chicken stock. I love garlic. So if you want to put a little extra in because you love it too, go ahead, because it's fun to have flavorful soup. And if you really like Mexican food, don't be shy to taste your broth when it's finished cooking, and continue to add a little more seasonings to it. The recipe says to add some salt. And it doesn't say how much. It just says add salt. So it's really like to taste. So I have a half a teaspoon of salt. A half a teaspoon. So I'm actually going to put, I don't know, I'm not going to fill it all the way up. But it's probably about half of this, which is, what is half of a half? It would be 1/4, right? So I'm going to put 1/4 in there, especially since I don't have much salt in my broth. And then it calls for adding thyme. Thyme is another seasoning. And I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off of this so I can pour it a little easier. And you can smell, it's got a very distinct smell. It's very good in a lot of food. And I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of thyme. And then I'm going to add another half a teaspoon of parsley. The recipe says that if you like the taste of dill, you could also add dill. But I'm going to stick with my parsley and thyme. So I went ahead and put a half a teaspoon of each of that in. All right. So we have our vegetables in our chicken stock, our garlic, and our seasonings. I'm just kind of looking over my recipe, Make sure that I have everything we need. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my burner here, which is about a halfway. Don't want it full blown, but, and I'm just going to stir this up a little bit. And you can kind of smell it. You can smell chicken already started. And for a cold day, there's nothing better than a nice cup of chicken soup. So I'm going to let that cook. And that's going to take up between 10 and 20 minutes, depending on how big you have cut your vegetables, because what we want is for them to be tender. So I'm going to go ahead and let them cook, and then we're going to be right back. I went ahead and I boiled my vegetables like we talked about, and it did take about 15 to 20 minutes to make sure that the vegetables were soft to taste. So I took a little spoon and put it in there like I do for taste testing, and set it aside to let it cool a few minutes, and then I tasted it. I liked the way the broth tasted. I liked that the consistency of the vegetable was soft, and then I knew that it was ready. And you want to do the same. At this time, you can also add more seasonings if you wanted it. You could maybe add a little pepper or something if you wanted to. But I liked it just as the way it was. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our chicken. We're going to add our chicken. I kept my soup here. It is actually what we call simmering. So that's just lightly cooking in here. You can actually hear it a little bit. And of course there is some smoke coming out of it. So I'm going to very gently put my chicken into and add it like that. Stir it up a little bit. And like I said, it's still cooking a little bit. It's simmering. It's not a rolling boil. It's just kind of the water's moving a little bit as a simmer. And you can actually smell it too. You should be smelling it in your home by now. All right, so we have our chicken in there, and one of the reasons we added it back to the stock is, of course, we want chicken in our soup, and we want to get it hot again because it has cooled down while it was sitting on the stove. So it's actually going to sit in there for just a couple minutes while I finish getting the rest of my soup items ready. One of the other ingredients that our recipe asks for is the juice from one lime. Now, you can decide if you like the soup just the way it tastes, you can just do that. But I'm actually going to use a little bit of lime. I don't have an actual lime, but I always have a little bit of a lime inside my refrigerator in a container like this, a little plastic container. And so I'm going to actually add just a little bit of lime to my soup. Just a couple squeezes. It asks for the whole juice of a whole lime. That could be quite a bit. So because I'm not real sure I'm going to like it, I'm going to start with a little bit to start with. So I did that. I'm going to let that continue to work and cool or heat up and cook. I have my ladle ready here in a couple minutes. Along with that, I've got a couple items that I'm going to serve with it. And these are the popular items that the recipe also talks about doing. And the first thing is tortilla strips. Have you ever used these before? These are actually fairly new by the croutons. Sometimes you'll find them. And they're just broken up little pieces of tocino, the crunchy tortillas. This one actually is a Southwest flavor, so that's kind of fun. It'll add just a little bit more to it. If you don't have that, you can use something like this, which is just regular chips. Many of you probably have chips and salsa at home, and you can use these as well. Because chicken noodle soup has noodles in it, tortilla soup has tortilla strips in them. So I actually have my combination so that you can see the differences that you can use. And I'm going to set those aside because we're going to add that to the soup in a moment. The other side to this soup, do you know what this is? Did you see this? Does anyone know what that is? It's an avocado. This is this actually did come from Mexico, actually, which is kind of cool. And I took it, I had a second one, I sliced it in half. This is what it looks like, sliced in half. There's actually a pit in the middle. And so I sliced it in half. I took the outer skin off, took the pit off, and then I sliced it in chunks. And we're going to add that also to the top of the soup in a moment. And then we have sour cream. Sour cream is another popular item that you can add to your soup if you'd like. So part of this, the fun of this particular soup, is that it has some extra things that are added to the top of the soup when it's done. So let's go ahead and put some in a bowl and see how it goes. I have actually a large bowl here so that you can see a little better. And I'm going to scoop out some of my soup. Has lots of good vegetables. And see how it's steaming right now. And depending on how much you like to eat, maybe you're going to have your soup with another dish, and maybe your soup is kind of like a soup and salad for your meal, or it could be your main meal. So we have our soup. We're going to add our Tostillo to the top, and I use the Southwest ones because it's kind of fun. And then we're going to add a couple pieces of our avocado. And you can decide how big of pieces you want. Avocado is a fun addition. I never really had avocado in a soup before, have you? I didn't even realize it. And because my soup is done, I'm actually going to turn it off. Now some people add the tortilla chips right to the soup and let them start getting soft, kind of like a noodle would. I like to put it on right before I'm going to serve it so that it stays a little crunchy, and because I might not eat the entire bowl of soup. So I don't want to put it away because then for sure it'll be soggy and fall apart. So I like to add it when I'm just about ready to eat. So here is my soup. So I'm going to take a little taste and see what I think. And delicious. Really, really good. Well, boys and girls, and you young at heart that are watching, I hope you had fun with this. I hope you make it and enjoy it. And if you do, let me know. I'd love to hear how it goes. And I hope it brings you some comfort on a cold day. Or if you're from the South, it's just a fun thing to do. Enjoy your warmth if you're from the South. For those of us here up north, it's always fun to have something warm and soothing on a cold day. Anyway, Happy New Year to those of you that are watching. I hope all is well for you. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.